how do I change the unit of measurement? If you're going to measure oneself by the size of one's home, there's all my grandmother always used to tell me, Kim, you're a pretty little girl, but there's always going to be somebody prettier. She would say, you're smart, but there's always going to be someone smarter. And I appreciated that. Because there's always going to be someone with a nicer car, a bigger house, or whatever. And sometimes we get caught up in, trying to measure our success by the units that society has placed on us, as opposed to developing our own metrics.
You're listening to Skilling Me Softly, brought to you by NTI Barbados, the podcast where transformation takes center stage through skills, mindset shifts, and real stories. Each week, we sit down with everyday people doing extraordinary things, learners, dreamers, professionals, and change makers, all part of our mission to inspire every Barbadian to believe in greater personal possibilities through access of information, knowledge, and skills.
And so I would say that it's a really good point, taking time, because we're so busy with all the distractions. And you mentioned how, Michael Chim just looking out the window and just dreaming, taking the time to think about what you desire and what you want that future to look like. And so what would you, describe that feeling to be like? What does it feel like to actually dream? Because there's a lot of people who don't know what that means. So how do you know if you're dreaming? How do you know what that feels like?
I think you have to couple yourself with success, but you have to spend time with other dreamers, because you have people that are just dream stealers, right? And then sometimes if you're in an environment where someone is not supportive of you or someone is criticizing you, it's problematic, right? Because you can't, get grow plants in soil that's not fertile. So you really do have to move yourself to fertile ground and couple yourself for success, right? So I feel that there are dreamers like Mia, when she was a little girl and she had to dream to even conceive, to be able to articulate that challenge of capacity and limitation. I think once you said that she envisioned herself as wanting to be the Prime Minister of Barbados one day. So so you got to find children like Mia that are dreaming too. And if you find yourself in an environment, and if you're in a family that they just, everything is just negative, and even when it's not raining, they see the clouds. Find someone who's looking at them, talks about the rainbow. Whether it's a teacher at school, there's always going to be someone that you can couple yourself with, kind of take you under that wing, and then share your dreams with that person, and not with people who are not going to be supportive of it. I mean, just after putting on this summit, it's created a lot of expense, and one of my friends said, "Oh, Kim, you lost a lot of money doing that." I said, "No, that was an investment. It's not a loss of money. Let's be clear." Right? So you just have to be very mindful when people come at you, and the words that they choose to use. Again, just thinking of Dr. Angelou, words are like furniture, right? They do decorate a room. So when you think about that dream, if you're not, accustomed to dreaming, then that means that you have words that are decorating your dreams, that you need to, find a different room, a different space with people who see the best in you. Because they're there. They're always there. In a beautiful country like this, they're everywhere. Go to the beach more. Like, it's true. I know one of the things out here, you get up that early in the morning, go to the beach, because the people at the beach early in the morning, they appreciate nature. You're not going to find that negative vibe at 5 o'clock in the morning on a beach in Barbados. It just does not exist.
That's right. Everybody getting a sea bath, relaxing.
Lots of dreams, lots of joy, lots of Bajan humor.
Very much. You mentioned success earlier. I wanted to tap back into that a bit. What is your idea of success? And success and legacy, are those the same thing? And what are your ideas behind that?
Yeah, I would say, when we think about success, we just lead with that question, like, what's important about success to you? It's different for different people. All right. And I don't think that it needs to be about money, because at the end of the day, like, everyone's earning capacity is going to be different. So,
Right.
people that say, oh, anything you put your mind to, you can do. Well, not really. Right. So, like, I could put my mind to running from here to there. Like, I am not Hussein Bolt, you built for comfort, not for speed. Like, I don't have the capacity to do that. And so if you set up success around other people's goals, or then you're going to kind of be doomed for failure. Like, you do have to look within oneself and ask, well, what's important about success to me? That might be, I think we all know on some level, like, birds know what direction to fly. They don't have to have a therapist and all these types of things, but I think we we don't want to own what we really believe in, what's important to us.
Right.
So I think we have to kind of just reflect on what's important about success to me as an individual. It could be, working with children, or and then once you have the courage to actually kind of, this is what makes me tick, this is what makes me happy. Then comes the, well, how do I monetize that? Because at the end of the day, we got to pay our bills. We can't just sit down and dream all day. And right. How then do we monetize that, so that that feeling of success can generate and build income and wealth and legacy? But when we think about legacy also, it's not just about money. It really is what we're putting in motion on a daily basis. If there is not if there is not work that can be monetized immediately, like, there's always something that one can volunteer to do. So I think, like, we all need to be engaged in something that's successful. And if we don't know, if we sit back and we can't figure out what is it for you, then just get moving. Just do something. Go and volunteer with an organization that's, and sometimes that's where you can kind of figure it out, or find people who are community minded to help you kind of figure out how to create your own success roadmap.
Right.
And then one last question on my end, in terms of, so purpose for me is a very important word, right? And my idea of purpose is that it's an ever-changing thing. So I think that purpose is something that my purpose now may change next month, right? And so on and so on. What is your idea of purpose? How do you see purpose?
I think there's that internal compass that makes each individual tick. And so I don't know if the purpose necessarily is evolving, but I think the way that we accomplish that purpose, to your point, Darren, does evolve and needs to evolve.
Right.
Because if you're always kind of doing the same thing, per se, but when you think about, like, when you craft a purpose statement, which crafted, there are certain words that I think even at my deathbed will be the same, right? And so grace. And it was interesting at the summit, one person
Like that.
described it. She says, Kim, you'll do things with grace. So I'm like, okay, so it does, people see it.
Yes, absolutely.
And so, taking the time to name it, like grace, gratitude, appreciation. There are certain things that when one lives a purposeful life and you're fulfilling your purpose, that it's gonna manifest itself in all that one does. When you think about Dr. Angelo Joy, right? So I think, like, those purpose on a high level are probably going to be the steadfast things. When you live your life, Darren, and think back on all the things you do, there will be an overarching purpose, but the way in which you accomplish that purpose as a living human being needs to evolve. You need not be doing the same thing, 10 years from now and saying, oh, this is my purpose.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's great. That is really great. And so that makes me think about like an everyday working class Barbadian, right? Those who want purpose and they want to build legacy and want to build wealth, but they always find themselves doing the same thing or always broke. What are some 3 things you can tell that average working person that doesn't have purpose, or they see themselves doing the same thing, that working class, broke, but want all of this, desires all of this? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, one step I think we always have to kind of get back to how you're going to measure success, right? So what's your metric? I remember we had a celebration at the Royal Pavilion, the Fairmont Royal Pavilion, and one day I was there, and um, I went in the water just with my shades on, and they came off, and the water started getting rough, so I'm just getting out of here. And a lifeguard, I didn't even realize, to be truthful, I was just so happy to get out of the water because it just started kicking up. He dived in and he got my glasses for me.
Oh,
I'm like, how did you even see to do that? How did you even notice that my glasses came off my face, number one? And he just smiled. So I would say, just like that lifeguard, like, you got to start noticing things, right? So, the fact that I still remember, those were expensive glasses, right? And so we might have got a tip more than, I don't know how much he gets paid, but you got to start noticing things. Because the opportunities to make money are always there. Right. And for me, as with my eyesight being impaired, I mean, those were my sunglasses, but suppose those were my real glasses. What would that have been worth to me? Right. So you just never know. There's always opportunities to make money if you notice what's happening around you. So that would be the first thing I would say. And then the second thing would be to couple oneself with success. Because if you surround yourself by people who are also broke, the chances of you staying broke are higher. And people say, well, how does one do that? Yeah, I remember when I was starting off in this field, I just at one point I was going to hang it up. Like, this is not for me. I'm not a salesperson. And so was guy saying, well, Kim, you got to go where people have money. I'm like, well, where's that?
Exactly.
How you want me to go? Yeah, like, what does that mean exactly? I'm going to go pay dues to join some expensive country club that I can't afford. I hate golf and I'm not doing that. Like, where exactly are you telling me to go? What does that mean? And then he said, if you're selling ovens, you have to sell ovens. Oh, no, he said, if you're selling oven cleaner, you got to sell oven cleaner to people with ovens that's clean. Said, you trying to sell oven cleaner to people with dirty ovens because you think that they need to clean their oven. But if they wanted a clean oven, it would be clean. I'm like, okay.
That makes sense. That's true.
Right. So I said, okay. And so then when you think along those lines and you start to couple yourself for success, that means doesn't mean that you're going to go and go to this Sandy Lane and so knock on the door and say, let me in so I can sit down with these people. But there are many Bajans there that are just like that lifeguard who has the mindset to add value to people's lives. And those are the people that one needs to couple themselves with, right? And then I think the third thing would be to change the unit of measurement. I think that's the most important thing a leader can do. You really do have to change how you measure things. Because if I wanted to measure whether or not this summit was a success by the amount of net revenue, like, it would be the biggest failure of my life. But that was never my goal, right? So you do have to start to think, like, how do I change the unit of measurement? If you're going to measure oneself by the size of one's home, my grandmother always used to tell me, Kim, you're a pretty little girl, but there's always going to be somebody prettier. She would say, you're smart, but there's always going to be someone smarter. And I appreciated that. Because there's always going to be someone with a nicer car, a bigger house, or whatever. And sometimes we get caught up in, trying to measure our success by the units that society has placed on us, as opposed to developing our own metrics. And so I think that's the third thing you can do, because if you have your own metrics, you have a much higher likelihood of succeeding because you set the standard, right?
Right. Wow, that's really good. That's really, really good.
I have one other question for you. In terms of this is a mental health question, because I know, this is in terms of mental health. I know you recently you recently have been diagnosed with glaucoma, right? Has that affected your mental health, and has that slowed you down in your progress of doing things?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, and probably I needed to be slowed down, right? Because when you talk about the and so again, it's one of these bittersweet things. It's we're talking about someone who, like, I never even wore glasses,
Right.
so this is like, what is this like? It's the nightmare that has come that I never envisioned having such of a severe shift in my eyesight. But again, just it absolutely slows me down, and things that I'm accustomed to just being able to do on my own, driving, things that I just took for granted, like boom, 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 like everything for me needed to happen in a New York minute. I have to
Exactly.
I mean, sometimes I would be around this and I'd be irritated, like, what's wrong with these people? I'm
Sound like Chrissy. Sound like Chrissy.
I've gotten a little used to it.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
I mean, I just, like, sometimes I'd be here and it's just like the frustration set in a little bit. But
Yeah. I get you
How to
totally.
cope with that mentally?
yeah, no, I came to that spiritual side, right? Because that's important too. You kind of look to the heavens, and you're gonna ask God, like, why me? Why this? Why now? And then listen, to what it is that God has to say to one. Like, you do need to slow down. Like, you do need to adapt a little more of this Bajan
lifestyle.
That's it.
Go into the sea, take a sea bath in the morning.
Absolutely. And not driving back like this, when it was here during COVID, I'm like, I don't know about me and this thing. I need to see the sunset. Like, I'm gonna make it back so I don't get arrested.
That was all of us.
Yeah, boy, it was me too.
Ain't nobody sticking in this house.
That would be me, I confess. But on a serious note, absolutely, it affects one's mental health. And so, in terms of, like, coupling oneself with success, like recognizing the need for a therapist,
Right.
a lot of the people that you see at the summit were people that I work with professionally,
Right.
to again couple oneself with success, so that we don't, oftentimes I go to bed and I'm like, what if I wake up and I can't see anything? What if this this condition worsens? If we just keep all of those things floating around in our mind, what good is that going to do anyway? So we do need to be mindful of our mental health. We do need to, and that's another kind of taboo, in the Caribbean, when, people have different challenges, mental health challenges. Sometimes we make light of them, use derogatory terms.
Yeah.
We need to stop that.
Yeah.
And realize that life is going to happen. We never know what's going to come our way, and there are a lot of resources to help people to work through these challenges, because it does take a toll. It affects work, it affects everything. It's affecting the way I have to work, the tools that I need. But I'm also thankful that if this had to happen, at least it's happening in a day of AI, when there's, I can use the microphone to type and not have, like, maybe if I had used more of those tools, my eyes wouldn't have had so much exposure to those, like, these computers that we stay on all day long.
Right.
So it's bittersweet. I would say it's definitely, my daughter says, is it a blessing, is it a curse? And I say it's a lesson. It's a lesson.
Good way to look at it.
It's a lesson.
Very good way to look at it.
Yeah, that's like such an in-between word as well.
It's a lesson, but absolutely, I mean, everything that's happening to us, mental health is something that we don't talk about enough.
Right.
And even though we talk about money, we don't always talk about it in a meaningful way.
Yes, very
Right.
true.
We a lot of times the older people, they don't want the younger ones to know what they have, and they die and everything is in a mess. Nobody knows where things are. So even though we talk about these things, like, we have to figure out how to talk about things constructively, so that when one's capacity is diminished, like my capacity has been diminished with the eyesight, as we get older, the young folks know what to do, where to find things, what to do next. Because at some point, our capacity is not going to be the same as we get older. It's just not.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. And so because you really involve your kids in everything.
Yeah.
I remember seeing them at that summit, running around and, makeup artists, and they had
Slides,
the hosting, like they're in every role as possible. And I was
Mhm.
really inspired by that, because it's true. Like, even growing up for me too, I wasn't super involved in everything. Just like you said, they're like, oh, no, this is big people business. What are
Yeah.
you doing over here?
Yeah.
And so that change for also young generation, old generation, every generation is really important to understand why. Because, you can tell us more, but of course, just involving, I would like to know more about why it's important to involve, but also where did that initially stem from? Where did that come from? And how could we now loosen those chains to then move forward to recognizing that involving kids, even at a young age, is actually a huge benefit?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it came from when I first had kids. I always would reflect on, well, what, as Darren said, what's the purpose of the thing? Like, how am I going to define like what motherhood looks like? What does it mean to be a good mother? And so there were three things that I said, that need to be accomplished to be what I felt would be a good mother. And the first one was that they had to learn how to swim. So
There's no back door.
yeah, that was it, right? So I mean, especially in New York City. Yeah, and it's funny to say that because that's what my grandmother used to say. That seat had no back door. And I'm like, okay, if our used to like to play with the balls, and we knew a certain point that ball is going to St. Lucia. So you don't even try to go after it. You know how many balls we lost? How many beach balls? It was like, that's probably about where the back door is.
Oh my goodness.
It's interesting. But, and I think growing up hearing that is problematic.
Yeah.
Especially if you live on an island.
Yes, it is.
Right? And I didn't even, we living in New York, but I, so, and not just to be able to swim like in a swimming pool, like you need to be able to swim in an ocean, right? And so that was like the first goal. And so we did that, in the morning we used to go to Brooklyn College and mommy and me swim. Kids could tell you like, let's get this thing down. You start off in the swimming pool, but you need to be a strong swimmer. And, for those of us, again, living in New York City, when Captain Sully's plane went down, right, and landed on the Hudson, fortunately, there were boats, to get people to shore. But if we had to swim to shore, right, you could, people going to bring you but so far in life, could you make it?
Wow.
If you had to swim.
You got to make it on your own.
Right, exactly. So, yeah, so being the ability to swim. And then the second thing was the ability to write. And I'm not saying that they have to be poetic like Dr. Angelo or Shakespeare, but you need to be able to get your thoughts out on paper to persuade people and follow up. And they could count the amount of times when an email kind of saved the day. Like you got to snap people into shape here. You have to document things.
Yes.
And then the third piece, which comes to involvement, was like the goal is for you to be autonomous. Like you have to be able to make good decisions without me directing you, telling you what to do, which is the harder part for parents. Like that's how you capacitate people. You got to take yourself out of this situation and let them make mistakes. And I figure if we can do those three things, then you all should be all right.
That's the secret sauce.
That's the secret
You heard
sauce.
it.
There you go.
So all this idea of, the sea has no back door, we're living on an island, right? We're fortunate that, they say God is a Bajan and the big storm has yet to come, all of that stuff. But, if something really were to happen and they're like, would we be able to swim? And there's no reason why we shouldn't be able to. So that's important. And also when it comes to like the ocean, like, I give you the example of my glasses, like swimming in an ocean, as we all know, very different from a swimming pool.
Oh, yes.
Right? You develop
For
the
sure.
judgment. You know there's not every time that you can go in the water. So there's a lot to being able to swim in the ocean. And Barbados is a perfect backdrop for it.
It's true.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I really love that. That was very beautiful. Like very good analogy and very good analogies, especially the ocean. I love that.
Yeah, I mean, if you have that clarity when you decide to be a parent, and if you have that clarity about what it is you're setting out to accomplish, then you're going to approach it differently.
Right.
Because then you don't have to be a doctor. Never, put pressure on my kids to get a math or English. Like, everybody's not going to be a mathematician.
Yeah,
I think
that's
sometimes
right.
we have obesity of the brain. We want straight A's and everything.
Yeah.
Monique, my daughter, she's still counting like this. She's laughing. Math don't want anything to do with it. But she's successful, right?
That's true.
And Lauren, she's not writing. Like, Monique have to help her to write those essays. I think she's still helping her to write some of these essays. So everybody can't have the capacity to do it. And if we put these pressure on our kids that we want, are we good at everything? Right. But somehow we want our kids to be, master of all trades. And it just doesn't work like that. Like, set up some realistic goals, whatever. They don't have to be the same as what I think is important, but they need to be clear, they need to be articulated, and then we got to create some accountability around that.
It's true.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well said. Yeah, you have so much gems.
It's true.
You really do. You're a woman of wisdom, and I really admire that. I know when we first met, we had little conversations here and there, and no matter what you said, it was always a moment, like, wow, that that she really said that very well, and it really resonated. And so I'm so grateful that you're able to share all these beautiful gems with us today. We've learned so much, and I know that all the listeners here and viewers, are really going to be in awe as well when they hear all the things you've mentioned. If you want to be wealthy, you hang with wealthy people. You can't be with broke people.
Can't be.
You gotta dream. You gotta dream big.
And you gotta swim.
Teach your kids how to swim.
No more of this. The ocean has no back doors.
Exactly.
You gotta get in there and swim with them too, right? It's like
That's
you
true.
send your kids to school.
That's right.
You gotta be involved.
You have to be involved, making the effort, and the first step is just education.
Yeah.
Going out there, finding the information. There's no excuses now with online and everything being free pretty much. And so you can see, Kim, you are very successful in your way, right? And your kids, are also a legacy to that. And so, everything you've shared it's really true to who you are. And so we just want to thank you for that. Thank you for coming and joining us. Thank you for meeting us. And just, we will definitely hear more from you.
Oh, I appreciate the opportunity to share. Thank you for all the amazing work that you all are doing across the island. It's fantastic.
Oh, thank you. Thanks so much.
Yes. Thank you so much, Kim.
All right.
And cut.